China, Russia, and Iran just carried out joint military drills off the coast of South Africa.
Chinese, Russian, and Iranian warships arrive at South Africa's ports for a week of naval exercises.
These drills will start on Friday and run until the 16th of January.
And the location of these exercises may matter more than the drills themselves. So let me explain why this is a bigger deal than it might sound at first. Three countries that are all feuding with the United States just brought warships thousands of miles from home to conduct exercises together in South African waters. And they did it at a place where the Indian Ocean meets the Atlantic, right next to one of the most important shipping routes on the planet. The drills started on January 10, 2026, and they're running for a full week. China is leading the exercise, which they're calling Will for Peace 2026.
In recent months, a series of military exercises conducted by several African nations has drawn growing attention from Western capitals, defense analysts, and international observers. While military drills are not unusual, the scale, coordination, and political context surrounding these exercises have prompted a broader conversation about Africa's evolving role in global security and its relationship with long-standing Western partners. For decades, Africa's military engagements with the outside world have largely taken place under frameworks shaped by former colonial powers, international peacekeeping mandates, or counterterrorism cooperation agreements. Today, however, the continent's defense posture appears to be entering a new phase, one marked by greater assertiveness, regional coordination, and a clearer emphasis on sovereignty. The drills themselves have varied in scope and location. Some have focused on counterterrorism readiness, others on border security, amphibious operations, or joint command coordination. In several cases, the exercises involved multiple African states working together, signaling a growing emphasis on regional security solutions rather than reliance on external forces. Western governments have been careful in their public responses. Official statements have emphasized respect for sovereign defense activities while quietly seeking clarification through diplomatic and military channels. Analysts say this measured tone reflects both recognition of Africa's right to self-defense and unease about shifting geopolitical alignments. At the heart of this unease lies a broader global transformation. The international security environment is changing rapidly. Competition among major powers has intensified, global supply chains have become strategic assets, and alliances once taken for granted are being reassessed. In this context, Africa, long viewed primarily as a theater of influence rather than an actor in its own right, is increasingly asserting its agency. Many African governments argue that their military modernization and joint exercises are overdue. They point to persistent security threats, including extremist violence, piracy, organized crime, and cross-border instability. From the Sahel to the Horn of Africa, these challenges have exacted a heavy toll on civilians and strained national institutions. In response, African leaders say they must strengthen their own defense capabilities rather than depend indefinitely on foreign troops or advisors. Regional organizations such as the African Union and sub-regional blocs have echoed this sentiment, calling for African solutions to African problems. The drills have also highlighted a shift in military partnerships. While Western countries remain important training and equipment partners for many African armies, several nations have diversified their defense relationships in recent years. Partnerships with non-Western powers, including China, Russia, Turkey, and others, have expanded, offering alternative sources of equipment, training, and strategic cooperation. This diversification has unsettled some Western policymakers who worry about losing influence in regions they once dominated diplomatically and militarily. Critics argue that Africa's new partners may not prioritize transparency or democratic norms. African leaders counter that sovereignty includes the freedom to choose partners based on national interests rather than historical expectations. The term challenge to the West has appeared frequently in media coverage, though African officials reject the framing. They insist that the drills are defensive in nature and not directed at any external power. Instead, they describe the exercises as signals of readiness, professionalism, and regional solidarity. Still, perception matters in international politics. Military drills serve not only practical purposes but also symbolic ones. They demonstrate capability, resolve, and coordination. When such demonstrations occur against a backdrop of diplomatic tensions, economic realignments, and shifting alliances, they inevitably carry political weight. In Washington and European capitals, defense analysts are assessing what these developments mean for long-term strategic planning. Africa has become increasingly important in discussions about global security, energy supply, critical minerals, and trade routes. Stability on the continent is no longer viewed as a regional concern alone, but as a global priority. Some Western officials privately acknowledge that past approaches may have underestimated African agency. For years, security cooperation often involved Western forces leading operations, with African militaries playing supporting roles. That model, critics say, failed to build sustainable local capacity and sometimes fueled resentment. Governments involved in the drills insist that civilian control remains intact. They emphasize that the exercises are conducted within constitutional frameworks and in accordance with international law. Transparency, they argue, is improving, even if perceptions abroad lag behind reality. Another key factor shaping Western reactions is the memory of past crises. From Libya to Afghanistan, Western military interventions have often produced unintended consequences. Many policymakers are now cautious about criticizing African defense initiatives too harshly, aware that heavy-handed responses could backfire diplomatically. Instead, Western engagement is increasingly focused on dialogue. Defense attaches, ambassadors, and military planners are working to understand the objectives behind the drills. Questions center on command structures, interoperability, and long-term strategic intent. There is also interest in whether these exercises could eventually integrate with international peacekeeping or crisis response mechanisms. China's role is particularly closely watched. Beijing has expanded its military diplomacy across Africa, including training programs, equipment sales, and joint exercises. Chinese officials describe their approach as respectful of sovereignty and focused on mutual benefit. Western analysts remain divided on whether China's growing presence represents competition or complementarity. Russia's involvement, though more limited, has also attracted attention. In some regions, Russian military advisors or private contractors have replaced Western forces, altering local security dynamics. African governments involved in such arrangements argue they are pragmatic responses to urgent threats. The military drills, therefore, cannot be viewed in isolation. They are part of a broader recalibration of Africa's external relationships. Economics plays a role as well. As African countries seek to control strategic resources and industrialize, security becomes a prerequisite. Governments argue that strong defense capabilities are essential to protect infrastructure, trade routes, and investment. In this sense, military exercises are linked to economic ambitions.